welcome back to Environments Exposed. I'm your host, Katie Titi, and today I'm very excited to have our featured guest. His name is Kute Blackson, and he has been all over the place. You may have seen him on Larry King. He had a book, You Are the One, and he has another book coming out called The Magic of Surrender. Very exciting. So I'll let him speak a little bit more into what he does, but I'm very excited to talk today about a surprise topic that I've had in store. So Kute, would you like to share a little bit more about what you do with our audience?
Sure. You know, I help people transform. I help people free themselves from the patterns of conditioning that we have often unconsciously built up from childhood and throughout life. And I help people free themselves from those patterns and connect with who they really are authentically and live that freely and boldly and powerful in the world so that they can share their gifts with the world in a very amazing way. And so I help people transform. I uncoach people, I uncondition people, I untrain people from the programming conditioning that we've learned to adopt throughout our lives.
I love it. The inner child and unpeeling those layers that don't serve. Love
Yes.
it. Awesome.
Yes.
So I have a kind of a different topic today.
Cool.
I wanted to talk. Yeah, I like to change things up.
Let's mix it up.
Yeah, especially because we normally have, usually we have women, doing on this podcast. So you are one of very few men that have been on this podcast. Yes.
Honored.
We're very excited to have you on today. So since you're talking to a mostly female or feminine oriented audience who tends to be creative and highly sensitive, and, in my podcast and my work, I talk a lot about environments. That could be spiritual, personal, area, companion, community, all sorts of environments, right? Because we have a creative audience. I'd love to kind of ask you some questions that would be geared towards that grouping. Sure. Okay. So in talking about, and this is just, especially given the pandemic and everything we're dealing with today, I see a lot of my audience experiencing overwhelm and just this like lack of capacity, not having enough for themselves at the end of the day, maybe when they've been giving to everyone else. Right. And so I want to talk to this audience today about how to get unstuck, because especially with women and feminine beings, we are often doing so much for other people that we have a tendency to maybe put ourselves last or not first, if you catch my drift. So I would love to hear your perspective on what these wonderful, creative, sensitive, feminine beings can do to get unstuck.
So if you could be more specific, unstuck in which way?
Creative.
Specific, creatively.
Yeah, like they have a lot of, they're very creative people, but creativity and kind of like pursuing their own initiatives, right? Their own dream.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, wow, I think as a whole, I think you're absolutely right. As feminine beings, you give so much to humanity. You give so much to, first, I want to just acknowledge you all as creative beings. You give so much to the world. You give so much to humanity. You in so many ways, women, you make the world go round in many ways. Out of you.
Sometimes we are round.
Yeah, let's just sit with it a second. Right? Out of you, we all were birthed. And here you are as these women, incredibly powerful, giving birth to life. And so in a sense, you are the creative process. You are the process of creation itself as the feminine. And I think part of the place to get unstuck or maybe begin is to realize that you are the process of creation. And then when you realize that you're the process of creation, you begin to realize how powerful and profoundly powerful you really, 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 really are. Like you are, I mean, I have no words for it, but you are freaking powerful. And just to not just like, okay, I'm powerful, but to to like really let that in and to really acknowledge it and to really get like, holy moly, like, yeah, like universes are birthed out of us. Existence is birthed out of us. Beings are like little baby, the humanity, all the people that we see is birthed out of us. And just to start by honoring your creativeness, honoring your power, what it takes to bring a life into the world. Honestly, my mind as a man can't even wrap around what that actually takes. And you just do it. You've been doing it from the beginning of time and make it look easy. Here you are as a pregnant woman, you go through life, you cook, you drive, you do your work, you sip your juice, you take care of the world, you take care of everyone else, and you just happen to be giving life to another human being. Like,
no. Thank you for that.
That isn't normal. Like I just want like everyone to get that isn't normal. And whether you are a mother or you're not a mother, that capacity of creation is inside you. That capacity of creation is alive in you. That capacity of creation is the essence of what you are as feminine. And what's saddening in our culture is, at least in the old patriarchal culture, is that creative, because sometimes creativity is invisible. It's not as scientifically structured and trackable in the world by world standards. And our world lives in a very, very masculinized grid that is all about numbers and tracking and graphs and profit and, and loss and what have you. And so sometimes that creative expression, that creativity, because it's not as tangible in moments, is not as valued. And so as the masculine, I am just honoring you, but also encouraging you to honor and fully rest in and embrace the full value of that sometimes intangible creative magic, and to take off like the pressure, the conditioning, the programming that's not as valuable, that's not okay, that's not as worthy as what we've been told is the masculine grid. Productivity, making shit happen, time out, like you got to be like that. And a lot of women I see, I'm going to say this, don't kill me, anyone, but a lot of women I see sometimes feel they need to be like a man, need to be as the masculine, and as a result end up disconnecting from the feminine creative magic that is pulsing through you and the world. As a humanity, we need this creative magic and inspiration and healing and aliveness more than ever. And so just you honoring that, and you taking any conscious or unconscious, judgments that you might have knowingly or unknowingly off, and just resting in the power of that, because you're powerful.
Yes.
And I would just say starting there, as a foundation.
Right there.
And creating, and from that place of like, yeah, this is what I am in this lifetime. From that place, creating the spaces, because in that masculinized, hyper-masculinized grid we live in that hyper-masculinized patriarchal program that we live in, that all of us have kind of been hypnotized in, there's no space to just breathe and be. We don't make time to just breathe and do nothing. We don't make time to sometimes just be still. We don't make time to just sit and just dance and be creative, or follow that creative impulse that doesn't seem to lead anywhere in the moment, but it might lead to, to paint, to create, to allow that creative space, because it's not productive. And so I think just even taking time in your daily schedules to allow that creativity, to allow that creative space to do nothing, because sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up. And sometimes one thing that keeps us stuck is we're going so fast in the masculine, thinking that's more productive, but then we end up burning out, then we end up not nurturing, you end up not nurturing yourselves, and then you're not as creative, truly creative. And a lot of what we have worked, what we think is creative in our culture is not creative. It's just, I don't even say productive. It's productivity, not creativity. Creativity is newness. Creativity is innovation. And so much of our culture is not creative anymore. It's just regurgitating the same rehearsed, stuff from the past, from what people have told us, rather than true creativity that comes from the inside. So just giving yourself the permission and the spaces, the actual scheduled spaces in your daily life to nourish the creative, to nourish that feminine, to nourish that goddess in you, I think is super important.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I hope you don't mind. I took a ton of notes while you were talking, because I have so much, so much to respond with too. And those of you listening, many of you are familiar with my journey as well. And I agree 100,000% with what you're saying, Kute. When I was in my 20s, I found myself in that grind and hustle culture, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And I think many 20-somethings are kind of stuck in that, how stuck in that, like how other people perceive us and how we're supposed to be productive, et cetera. Not only did my creativity suffer sometimes, and I've got a design background. I mean, creativity, like I am like a creative person in my soul. So when I do not get that, I'm like not myself at all. And I really, my soul hurt from that. My creativity hurt from that. And even my, my self-care, my health was damaged from it too. And I was very fortunate to recover from all of that. But I think many women and feminine beings, and also this hurts men too. I think that the hyper-masculinized society that we live in, like you said, it hurts women, but it also hurts men. Because men have a feminine side within them, that creativity, we all do. So I really appreciate you saying that, because, and by the way, I want to share why I was so inspired to ask you these questions. And anyone listening to this, if you're wondering if you could just record everything that he said in the beginning about how awesome you are, you don't have to, because he actually has these amazing ode to women type music videos on YouTube, and they're really beautiful and encouraging. So if you're having a bad day and you just need to hear, especially from a man who's loving, that you're doing okay, and that really you have so much to give, I invite you to go check out his YouTube, because that's where I was inspired to go ask these questions.
Oh, nice.
It was beautiful. I really appreciated it for myself as well. But yeah, under patriarchy, it's really hard. Even if you look at the way things are valued, and the way women and feminine beings often feel like, well, if I take this time for myself to be creative, I'm not giving to someone else. I'm not able to be a resource for this person or this person. We falsely think that it's selfish, but it's exactly the opposite, I believe. And to kind of your point earlier, our creativity is part of our gifts. So when we're not in our creative, natural feminine flow, we are in fact not being as generous, right? Ironically, as we could be. So, that's pretty darn cool, I think.
Yeah.
To be able to resource in that way. Yeah. So no, thank you for sharing all of that. And that is an issue. So, and actually I'd like to talk about that a little bit more too. Women and feminine beings, we often feel selfish when we take time for ourselves. And so it's this repetitive loop, right? I think even once you kind of hear this message and say, you know what, oh yeah, when I'm in my creativity, I'm in my gift, I am being generous, I am of service to the world, just when I'm being myself, when I am nourished and creative, etc. Even if you kind of hear that and start to latch onto that, it's hard to kind of sink in. It can be hard to sink into that and remember that. So what would be your advice to kind of interrupting that self-judgment, we'll call it a self-judgment loop that we sometimes get in?
Yeah, I think, it's just the awareness of that. And, I would say that it's not just the interrupting, it is how you work with those loops, and the way in which you go about it is as important as the issue itself. And so you could be like, okay, this is what I do, and now I'm going to boom, 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 boom. Now so I think sometimes the way you might go about it, not you, just as a general whole, but the way one might go about it might end up being very masculine, as a very masculine way of interrupting those loops, as an example. And I'm actually saying, just being able to meet yourself with that feminine gentleness in the process of how you work with yourself is as important as the pattern itself. Mm-hmm. And so just number one, cultivating the awareness of, oh, okay, this is what I do. And then when you start noticing that with gentleness, realize, okay, underlying every behavior is a positive intention. And through every behavior, usually I'm seeking to get myself something positive. And so let me be aware of that. And the way I'm going about it may not be the most positive. So now that I'm aware of that, can I bring that feminine compassion and empathy and softness in the way I am with myself? Because how you go about transforming is the transformation, and how you go about transforming is the healing. And so, for instance, like the issue is not the issue, it's your relationship with the issue. And so I'll give you an example of mine. I used to be very, 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 very impatient. And so when I started figuring, oh, well, maybe it's not so spiritual to be impatient. Like, the Dalai Lama must be patient and all spiritual beings are patient. So, okay, cool, hurry up and be patient now. And so I was becoming so judgmental and impatient with my impatience that it was now making me more impatient, and I was staying even more stuck. And so judgment just tends to reinforce the very pattern. And so if you realize that the issue isn't the issue, it's how you hold it. The issue isn't an issue, it's how you hold yourself. And so when you can see where you are contracted or where you are stuck in a certain way, to be able to relax and breathe and connect to the moment, connect to your body, and meet that with loving, meet that with feminine energy, meet that with mothering, meet that with kindness, then healing can happen. Then there can be a melting, a relaxation of that. Then you can meet that, because that part of you that's going, giving, it means well. It's trying to get you, trying to do good for people. It's trying to get you love. It's trying to do something. So when you can recognize, oh, what is this part of me that doesn't stop? What is it trying to get me? What is it trying to do for me? Thank you. Then you can meet that with appreciation. Like, oh, thank you. Then you can get into relationship with that part and actually give that part what it really wants or it needs, which is usually compassion, loving, empathy, kindness, and healing. Real healing is our applying loving to those parts of ourselves that are hurting. Real healing is applying love to those parts of ourselves that are hurting. And when we are out of balance, when we are pushing so hard, when we are not connected, underneath that, there's usually some pain. Some pain that for instance, you might say, well, what do you mean pain? Pain may be, I don't feel worthy as I am. And so I need to overgive and overdo, because if I don't feel truly worthy as I am, but if I help the world and help my, everyone else, and give to everyone else, then I'm going to finally be worthy, because deep down there might be that. So the overgiving might be a subtle compensation for my not feeling worthiness. And so if I can just acknowledge that and just go, oh, really, there's the pain that I'm feeling that I'm not acknowledging as pain, but the pain is, there's a little kid inside of me that doesn't feel worthy. Yeah. Then you can start meeting that part of you with loving and tenderness and compassion. And that's where the healing can happen. And I think that's where people can start.
I love that. And, that's why a lot of people talk about, inner child work. And part of the reason why this is so important is because we need to approach healing with love. When it's approached with, judgment or harshness, it obviously doesn't feel good, but in my opinion and experience, it just does further damage. In some cases, can come off too harsh. Mm-hmm. And, especially as a creative being, what I found, even, kind of as someone with a design background who's taken a lot of art classes and obviously, had critiques and whatnot. One thing I can say as someone with an artist background is that when someone's too critical, it can not only not feel good and feel harsh, but it can also really stifle your creative process. It might just stunt everything that you're kind of working on. So that's why we, for example, often find ourselves in life not being as creative as we want to be for a number of different reasons. All these, external factors coming at us, like judgment from, mom or dad or the kids at school or whoever it was, and how that kind of shaped how we look at ourselves. And I think women especially, many of us have been raised with this idea that we're supposed to be a certain way for people. There's this good girl syndrome or whatever you want to call it, who we have to be for other people. We often talk about the invisible work that women do that's not acknowledged as well. And to your point about the worthiness, I think a lot of women and feminine beings have a worthiness. I think everyone does.
Yeah.
I think at some level, everyone has a worthiness conversation. But I think we talk about women and feminine beings, I think it's a specific conversation around how the patriarchy has shaped us. When we look back at how women, especially women of color, have been treated in the patriarchy, and also, going back thousands of years. Even if you look at, for example, things like the Bible, look at Adam and Eve. Eve was supposed to be this evil temptress. If you start off the book that way, how's the rest of the story going to go?
It goes deep in the psyche, it's right? A deep hypnotic conditioning that goes deep in the psyche. And I just want to say, as a man, I don't believe in equality.
Okay.
I don't believe in equality. I think it's bullshit. I think it's a joke. I think it's the biggest joke perpetrated by the masculine. I'm a man that loves being a man. I'm not a man that, I wish I was a woman. I love being a man. I would never change it in this lifetime. But I think this conversation about equality is really, I don't believe in it. Here's why. I actually don't believe that, as we said, as women, you give birth. The stuff you deal with, it's not equal. It's not equality. It's not equal. Like the feminine, you are like the freaking ocean, infinite ocean, mentally, emotionally, sexually. It's just like the ocean. The masculine, we're like a little sailboat or maybe a surfer on the ocean. And it's like the truth is, there is no competition on so many levels. It's not a competition. We can't give birth. I get a headache for 1 minute and I'm crying. The stuff you deal with every month, the stuff you deal with in childbirth, it's not even a comparison. And so I think, humbly, so much of the patriarchal control over the generations and over the years has come out of the insecurity of the masculine and the insecurity of men, being threatened by the real feminine power, by men being threatened by the freaking vastness of this infinite ocean that is the feminine, infinite capacity to feel, infinite capacity for orgasm, infinite capacity for so many things. And so, because many men have been threatened by that, what we have sought to do throughout time is control, suppress, burn, control, suppress, destroy, devalue, cover up, muzzle, etc., out of our own insecurity and fear of the feminine. If men truly realized who they were and truly realized the nature of the ocean that the feminine is, and truly realize the nature of what is in reality, then rather than fight it or live in fear, it's really how to live in harmony with. And if men really realize that, they would just we would just surrender to the realization that there's no equality. The feminine is so much more vast in so many ways, but that doesn't mean we can't surrender into it. You look at Laird Hamilton or Kelly Slater, these big wave surfers. They're not equal to the ocean. I'm sorry, they're not equal to the ocean. The ocean will kill them. The ocean will love them. The ocean will, throw them into the ground. It's just they're not equal. But that doesn't mean they can't live in harmony with the ocean and swim in the ocean and surf. But they have to come, for them to be able to be in real relationship with the ocean, that has such vast capacity, they have to know their relationship with it and realize the reality, like, I'm not equal to this ocean, but, and from that, have the deep, profound respect for the ocean. You see those surfers, because the ocean is feminine, they go into the ocean with profound respect and devotion and reverence for the rightful place of the ocean. And then there can be that harmonious dance with the masculine and the ocean. And I think so much of it is in that realization, then the feminine can be celebrated in her sort of rightful place, not as more than or less than, but at the level of soul equal. At the level of soul, we're all equal. But at the level of humanity, there are some realities, and in that, it's a celebration to celebrate then the masculine can begin to not control or force or what have you out of fear, but to start to empower and celebrate the shall we say, the complementary opposite nature, the complementary polaric opposite blessings and gifts that the feminine is. And in that, then there's the dance. We're not trying to be the same. There is no freaking competition. We have masculine and feminine inside of us, of course, but in that realization, there's no competition. There's the masculine, there's feminine, and there's a beautiful complementary gifting and offering. And that's when the yin yang harmonization happens, And so I think as men, we get to grow up and stop being little boys and stop being grow up and stop being afraid little boys, so that we can realize and celebrate and honor the power of what the feminine is, and create shall we say, work to create more structures, systems and structures in the world also, to allow for the worldly equality, so that the feminine's gifts can thrive. And the reality is, when the feminine thrives, all of humanity thrives. When the feminine thrives, let's just masculine feminine, when the masculine realizes the power and the vastness of the feminine, he realizes, geez, when I allow the feminine to thrive and I give her everything, you can't outgive the feminine. She's freaking infinite. So you give her 1, she gives you 400 back. And so what's the fear? What's the competition? And so we have to create the space in our culture, to allow the feminine, and not in some, and I just want to be clear, not in some sort of like gender, it's just to allow the space to honor the feminine in our culture, so that there is that honoring. Otherwise, we're a culture that we've lost the grace and the power of the feminine in our culture. We've lost it. We've lost it in our government. We've lost it at work because so much of the feminine can't be honored in the corporate grid of the workplace, got to fit into, and we lose so much creativity, intuition, cooperation, women and leadership. It's like it gets lost, and so then our culture, I think, has gone a bit off balance in a certain ways, And so I could keep going, but those are some thoughts.
I agree with you so much. And by the way, anyone listening to this who wants to date a surfer now, that's a great analogy, right? We talk about the ocean and relating to the feminine, and I thought that was such a beautiful analogy, because you're kind of like referring to how when the masculine is understanding and studying and like understanding the feminine. I mean, what beautiful things can be created. I mean, you could have a surfer riding a 100-foot wave somewhere, right? I mean, and that's badass, that is so badass. I love that analogy. And also, I think you're totally right about this equality conversation. It's not equality, it's something different. I don't have a name for it yet, but the complementary that you mentioned is definitely on board. And there's another thing I want to say about this too. There are some people out there kind of denying that there are certain characteristics and qualities that are masculine and feminine. And I have to disagree with that. Mm-hmm. I think what's coming up for a lot of people now, and I love Gen Z, but I have to disagree with some of these folks on this. as an elder millennial myself, but there are masculine and feminine traits. It's just that society has shamed people so much into their roles that I think a lot of people don't want to admit that it's like okay to be like, if someone is, for example, a more masculine leading woman, that's awesome. But you know what? Society has shamed that so much that I think people are just backing away from the masculine and feminine dynamics altogether, which is just not going to help anything. To your point about when we really honor the feminine and how we just don't just like adapt it to certain things, but we really infuse it into societies. When we take systems and not just repair them, sometimes maybe even redo them. Because when I look at the way society has been created, it's been created largely by men for men, and women have been adapting to this. It's why I think so many women now are becoming entrepreneurs, because they get to create their own rules, right? And that's so powerful. To kind of say, we're going to just look at this and create something completely different than what anyone else has seen before, because we're not going to fit into this mold anymore. That is many of us now, I think. Especially when we talk about corporate, I mean, oh my gosh, can we talk about, that was definitely created by men for men. Even if you look at it to the granular perspective of the size of furniture, right? Having an interior design background, I will tell you that the desks were made for men who are around 6 foot something tall. And so as a woman, 5'4", by the way, going into an office, you're like, when I started working in the corporate environment years ago, when standing desks were kind of new, and so you just kind of had to adapt or have that posture. Maybe they would give you a keyboard tray if you were lucky. But even down to the furniture was sexist. It infuses every aspect of society. So I think it's really cool that we get to have these conversations. We get to talk about how to change and unpack and really reduce some of the stuff that doesn't work, because it really affects every aspect of society. It's so interesting.
For sure.
Yeah. But we got to find a new word. So I don't know. I'm down for brainstorming. I'll have to share some ideas. It's not equality. It's something along the lines of the complementary polarity that we're talking about. So, but I think that's really beautiful. And I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on this, and the nourishment that goes along with these sorts of things. My goodness, the feminine approach, the loving approach, the non-judgy approach to ourselves, so we can heal and we can also create. Because I think that, similar to a point that you were making earlier, it's hard to create when we are not healed, when we are wounded, because we're not in our fullest capacity to be able to do so. So that's really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even so much of our spiritual practices, talk about corporate, are created by men, for men, that go, sit in a cave and don't move for 10 days, and nothing wrong with it. I enjoy it, but it is a very masculine approach.
Have you sat in a cave for 10 days?
Not in a cave, but on a cushion,
Okay. Oh, you mean spiritual practices? Yes.
Yes.
Sitting still. Yes. Meditation.
Just sitting still, not moving for 6 hours at a time. And so a lot of practices that have been passed down were created by monks. Most monks were men. By rishis. Most rishis were men. Yogis. Most yogis were men. And so I think there just has to be the integration and inclusion of the feminine into life. And because the feminine is life, look, the first thing created in existence was light. Let there be light. The first thing created was light. Light is the source of feminine energy. All light is the source of feminine energy. And light shines in the void. The void, the darkness, the void is the masculine. So life itself is the interplay of light and void, flickering. It's physics, it's happening. Life, light and void, it's happening. And so this is life. So life becomes the lovemaking of consciousness, of existence. Life becomes the interplay of masculine and feminine energies. Okay, we don't want to put a label on it, light and void, but it's still an interplay of this light and void happening. And so it's life, it's the dance. Life in and of itself is, you could say, motion and feminine and movement and flow, and it's just life, it's existence. And so at that level, it's feminine. It's very feminine. And so it's time we embrace that. It's time we reintegrate that into our being, and not losing anything from anyone, but we get to integrate that energy, that frequency, and celebrate that. And I really believe when we do celebrate that, and the feminine is celebrated, all of existence will thrive. Yeah. All of existence. It's like we will finally be watering the roots of a tree again, and the entire tree will start to blossom. We haven't been watering the roots of the tree. We have been craving feminine energy. Yeah. You know, and you look in our culture, you look on Instagram, you look on, magazines, it's like we're craving feminine energy, but what we're craving is something much deeper, Yeah. So when you water the roots, the entire life starts to blossom with Shakti, with aliveness, with vibration, with resonance. And so I think that's where we get to go, as a culture, is water the roots of true, authentic spirituality, true, authentic feminine honoring. And then as the feminine radiance and light can be allowed to blossom on planet Earth, we breathe, we're all blessed, really, in that.
That's beautiful. I totally agree. I think everyone wins when we embrace the feminine. And like you said, we have like these pieces of it, but it's so incomplete. It's like you said, with the roots of a tree not being watered. It's like there's all this untapped potential, which would be like the roots of the tree, everything underneath that we're not seeing, right? And instead we're taking like chunks out of this tree instead and calling it femininity. That's not at all what it is. It's so watered down, and it's not the essence.
Yeah, and even men, men having the space to authentically honor our emotions and feelings, which is another denial of the feminine.
Women are craving, by the way.
Which women are craving, for sure, but for men to be able to honor their feminine feeling and emotion authentically is a healing, and women are craving, and it's an integration for the masculine, and so it's on all levels.
Yeah,
it's on all levels.
Very true. It was funny when you were talking about the monks earlier, I had this vision of like, I always, because I haven't seen monks in person, but I've seen them in movies, and I've seen them, or documentaries, etc. And yes, there's that sitting still element. And I'm just wondering what you would think, like, just maybe from your own experience or your perspective on it, given you were talking about monks. How do you think these guys who've been sitting still forever would feel if they had a bunch of dancing around them as they were trying to meditate? I mean, what kind of experience do you think that would have for them? I think it would be really interesting to kind of see that play out. Do you ever think that would
we'll open up an interesting topic, because I could take this in different places, but I think because of the suppression or the denial of that authentic feminine, there's been this, like, in spirituality, like, there shouldn't be movement, there shouldn't be feminine, and so the feminine's been pushed away. So many times when you end up, and this is taking a slightly different direction, but I think it might speak to something you're saying, many times when monks or spiritual yogis or spiritual masters who've been meditating in caves, come to America, come to the West, come to Santa Monica, come to Hollywood, come to New York, and then all of a sudden there are women dancing around. They don't know how to necessarily deal with that, in a sense, because they've so suppressed their own feminine energy. And so a lot of inappropriate things happen as that energy gets activated within themselves, and they haven't been in relationship in a healthy way with that energy. So there's a lot of stuff that's come out in the last few years of monks or holy men, not it's inappropriately dealing with the feminine, their students, etc. And so I think there just needs to be that healthy integration in the feminine. Otherwise, it's sought out there.
Yeah,
it's sought out there. And then a lot of those monks that so suppress that part of themselves then don't know how to deal with the beauty and the authenticity of the feminine out there, because on some level it's not their fault. It doesn't make it good or bad. It's just their conditioning, and so that's why I think the healthy integration of feminine energy on all levels is so important. The flow of energy, the flow of feeling, the flow of emotion in a healthy way, in a really, really healthy way.
Yeah, very true. And it kind of goes back to something you said earlier about how the creative process isn't outside of us, it's within us, or we are it, right? Just like you are the one, like you're
The
telling
creative process is life.
It's-
Ultimately, the ultimate creative process is life. And I think the creative process, yes, isn't just painting or drawing. It's just opening up to seeing life itself as art, life itself as the creative process, and then every moment of your life, from how you speak and how you interact and the relationships you create, how you communicate, how you dress, how you do everything, can start becoming a creative expression from the living of your dreams. Then I think every moment becomes an opportunity to create. Every moment becomes a beautiful, creative, a moment in life when you start seeing life itself as the creative process. So there's no separation then, on a whole nother level, no separation from, I'm going to go do my creative time now, to life is my creative time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To see it that way is to one integrated flow. I love that. When I think of my coaching, I think of myself as kind of like, design teacher off to the side, just kind of like watching my students and painting their own canvases, right? That's how I kind of see my own coaching as well. And it's so funny, actually, as we're speaking, I have my cat here, and she is the essence of feminine being. She's nurturing herself and she's relaxed. And I don't know what she's going to create later. Maybe some snuggles for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but she's a perfect example. She's actually one of my best teachers, honestly. But yeah, it was a beautiful conversation. I could talk to you about this for hours, but I know you probably have to wrap, and we want to make sure we talk about your upcoming book and anything else we want to share with the audience. So first of all, guys, we have a link in the verbiage for this podcast episode, which will include the YouTube, but also, Kute, you want to share more about your book?
Yeah, the book is called The Magic of Surrender. The book comes out, depending on people listen to the conversation, May the 3rd. Go to Amazon. If you get pre-order the book, pre-order it. There's lots of goodies and gifts that you'll get to experience. May the 7th, I'm doing a live event. For those that pre-order the book, you can go to www.Kute Blackson, my name, kuteblackson.com /reinvent seminar. I'm doing a very special 2 to 3 hour seminar talking about the creative process. It's really about how do you reinvent yourself and release the past and connect with your authentic expression and share that with the world. And so that will be May the 7th. And so you get to get access to that. So the book is called The Magic of Surrender. It's all about helping you find the courage to let go and access the power of surrender in your life. I think in our culture today, I think surrender is also you could say a feminine, energy in a certain sense, but if you look at all of the great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Mandela, Martin Luther King, anyone that did anything great, man or woman, they all surrendered themselves to being lived by life, to life itself. And so in our culture today, there's this idea or misconception that to surrender is weak, that to surrender is passive, that if you surrender, it's giving up, it's waving the white flag, that if you surrender, you're going to be a doormat, you're going to be a victim, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires, you're going to get less. And I'm actually saying, in surrendering, what if you got more joy, more life, more abundance? What if you got more than you could have even imagined with your conscious, logical, left brain mind, your egoic mind? What if life gave you more? And so I think when we surrender, we transcend our own human limitations. We go beyond ourselves, and then we tap into life, and life manifests through us. And so surrender is a letting go of control, all the control that we thought we had. It's when we stop trying to force and manipulate life to fit our limited idea of how we think it should be. It's a giving up of who we think we should be, how we think life should be, so that we can be truly open and available. So taking the limits off of life. And so the book is really a roadmap to help people surrender more freely and more fully in every area of life.
That is so exciting. I love, oh my gosh, we love the topic of surrender around here. I talk about it sometimes as well. So I really can't wait to pick up your book. And guys, I highly encourage you to check out Kute's books, both of them, especially this one coming up. Very exciting. Thank you so much for joining us. This was
Thanks for having me.
awesome. Yes.